all gathered here at our local hotspot, Quinchit, so that people have a chance to get to know Melissa Clark. Melissa's a very familiar figure to residents of Eagle Mountain. She earned a reputation of concern for her fellow residents while serving on the city council. She answered calls for help from all kinds of residents in all sorts of difficult situations and responded by connecting them with resources to solve problems in their neighborhoods. Kevin and I first met Melissa when she came out answering a call of concern we had about a piece of delicate habitat that was threatened by development. And it had been storming, and she showed up in a little pair of jelly sandals.
They're Crocs.
Okay. And she didn't hesitate. She just waded out in the mud and did what she needed to do to see what had to happen. And so she's also quite fearless in her pursuit of doing what's good and what's right. I thought it would be fun to ask Melissa a few questions so we could all get to know another side of Melissa. So, are you ready?
Yes.
All right.
Let's do this.
Okay, so we know from things that you said at City Council that you grew up in Minnesota. So we're wondering if there are animals that you would see growing up in Minnesota that you don't see here.
Yes. One of the ones that I haven't seen here in Utah for almost the whole time I've lived here, except for last summer, are squirrels. Like, we have a bazillion squirrels in Minnesota. Like, people make special feeders for them and, like, cool things like that. So it was really cool to see a squirrel, but it was way up in the mountains. And I just don't see them around here very often. And then the other animal that we have there that we for sure don't have here in Utah is the loon. And the loon is like this gorgeous animal that's like black and white speckled. And they're huge. You think, oh, a little bird. They're almost 3 feet long from nose until tail.
Oh, wow.
And their wingspan's like 6.5 feet, so they're gigantic. So they're really cool. It's a Minnesota state bird, so that's definitely something we don't have here in Utah.
Sounds a little more impressive than the Utah Sea. What local animal would you miss seeing the most if you went back to Minnesota?
There's two. I always thought it was really cool when we moved here, and I finally got to see antelope. Everybody, knows that song, where the deer and the antelope play. We learned that as kids. But I don't think I had ever seen, like, antelope. And they're just, like, all over here in Eagle Mountain, Saratoga Springs. So for sure that. The other thing that I've seen here in Utah, obviously, is the kestrel. I don't know if I was aware of them as a young kid, or if we just don't have them in Minnesota, but that's for sure something that I love watching as I drive around. And then the other one that's very unique to mountainous areas are those like mountain sheep, the big curly horns.
Yeah.
And they're just not something you see in Minnesota. So all of those things I think I'd really miss, being in Minnesota because they've just become a part of us.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious, what is your favorite flower and how did it become your favorite?
I really love pansies because they're very unassuming and they'll grow kind of wildly sometimes and they can come really early in the spring and I love that. The other thing that I love are lilacs. Like we have those in Minnesota and pretty much everyone has a lilac bush in their yard, but they're not as common here in Utah, so I just love the way they smell and the way they look. They're so pretty.
Oh, nice. They have a lovely smell.
They do.
Yeah. You once said to someone on our board that changing a baby falcon changed your life.
Yes.
So, considering the wildlife here, what does local conservation mean to you personally?
Well, the thing is when you hold something like a falcon in your hands, you are very aware of the responsibility that we have as humans because there's these amazing birds that, can pounce on mice and all sorts of things, but they're also very fragile because of their habitat and how they rely on us to not put certain things where they need to be. So that for me really lit a fire here in Eagle Mountain because I felt like we had such a responsibility, back to the whole responsibility piece, just to make sure that we keep those things around. Because wildlife really is a reflection of the health of a community too. So for me, that was a big part of why I always wanted to be involved in something like that.
Well, you have always supported the Eagle Mountain Nature and Wildlife Alliance long before we became a nonprofit. Before we even were the Alliance, we were known as the Wildlife Group. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Why do you feel so strongly about supporting our mission and helping us succeed?
Well, there's two reasons. One goes back to that responsibility piece, like what we do here. I was raised that you always leave something better than you found it. If you go someplace, you leave it better than you found it. And that whole responsibility piece of taking care of wildlife has been a really big deal to me. But like you said when you're introducing me, I'm that person that's always like cheering people on and like helping them get to the resources that they need. And that comes because as a kid, I didn't have everything super easy. And people took the time to invest in me and cheer me on. And it kind of is that same adage of you leave it better than you found it. I believe we need to leave people better than we found them. And it's just been really neat to kind of help you guys and cheer you on because we get to see the good things that happen in the community because of those efforts. So yeah, I get really excited when I see like the Wildlife Alliance or the Mountain Bike Group or the Arts Alliance, you know, all of those things, because I think our community is so much better when you have people who have passion driving those things forward. So.
Very profound. I appreciate those words. What's one part of the local ecology that you currently admire and why? It could be a particular insect or animal or piece of land, a relationship between different beings, for example.
That's so funny that you asked that because we came to Eagle Mountain to visit some family members a couple years before we moved here. And I remember we were on Lehigh Main Street because that was like the only way in and out of Saratoga in Eagle Mountain. We were on Lehigh Main Street stuck in really bad traffic because it was just one way each way. And I remember telling Nathan, my husband, I never want to move here. It's so yellow and orange. It's not great. Like I was complaining about it because it was in the hot heat of the summer. And now I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. Like you wouldn't be able to drag me away from Eagle Mountain. So it's funny how there was something that I was just so opposed to has become such a big part of my heart. Very specifically in our community, I really love the Hidden Canyon area and how it's so close. Like we can just park right off of the road and be able to get to it. And I love those little teeny tiny purple flowers that come in the spring. We're gonna get them soon. I'm really excited because they look so beautiful and they're such a big contrast to everything else that's around. They're so tiny compared to the mountains that we live in. So yeah.
They kind of tint the landscape, don't they?
For sure. It's like little butterflies or fairies came around with like paintbrushes. Like, I just love it.
Well, as you've participated in various activities supporting the preservation of wildlife and natural habitat, which would you say is the most memorable?
Well, for sure, banding kestrels, because that was such a unique experience. Like you felt like a VIP because you got to, you know, and now hundreds of people in Eagle Mountain have had that opportunity, so it's really neat. But I distinctly remember it was a couple years back, and you guys were doing your first big like conservation project where you were going to plant some native plants to be habitat for animals in our hillsides. And there were 1,000 other things going on in the city that day. So there were plenty of places that people could have been. But I remember being there really early in the morning with you and Bettina, and cars started coming, and people started walking up the hill to the cul-de-sac all the way up to the top. And I remember thinking, like, this is going to be huge. Like, and I think the reason why I love that event so much, don't cry, Mary, you're going to make me cry. The reason why I love that event so much is because, like, you want your friends to succeed, you want their passions to like, and I remember just thinking like, there's people here. I'm so happy for you guys. And I just thought, this is historic. This is the beginning of something really amazing.
Yeah, it had a really special feeling or spirit about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. When you previously served on the Eagle Mountain City Council, how do you feel that elected officials can help local organizations like the Eagle Mountain Nature and Wildlife Alliance, or how can people who want to help get more involved?
Ooh, those are great questions. So, as a city council member, one of my favorite things was when we would have meetings, city council meetings, we'd have that work session and then policy session where you make all the big decisions. In the middle of that is always this break. Usually there's this break. Sometimes they go kind of long and you don't get your break. But what I loved about that was that we got to meet whomever was there in the seats, and we could walk out there and find out, like, hey, why are you here? What item are you here for on the agenda? So that is one way that I think elected officials is just to stay connected with the people. And then for the residents, come to those meetings, get to know the people who represent you. So when they're doing something awesome, you can say good job. And when they're doing something that frustrates you, you can reach out, and they know that you're a person and there's a face with that name that comes to that email address. So that's my advice to residents, to stay involved that way.
That's great advice. It's worked for us.
Yeah, it sure does.
Okay, my last question for you is, how does wildlife impact local businesses, and how can local businesses support the Eagle Mountain Nature and Wildlife Alliance?
I love that you asked that question because I'm the president of the Eagle Mountain Chamber, so my heart really is in small business and just making sure that they can grow and thrive here in the community. There are three things that businesses can do. Of course, there's money. Like causes like this are expensive because you have to purchase land sometimes and you have to get the word out and you do education. So money, that's number one. Number two is your time. Maybe that means helping on a trail or helping work at an area digging, new habitat and whatnot. But the third thing is something that I don't think a lot of businesses think about, but I think that they need to share their network. They have customers that may not even know that we have a wildlife alliance here. And if they post about something that you guys are doing, that helps get the word out to people who are outside of your normal sphere of influence.
Right.
And honestly, those are the things that businesses can do. Why does it impact them? Because the health of a community, like I said before, is largely reflected in the health of our wildlife. So for a business to thrive, it needs to be in a community that cares about things like the arts and the wildlife and small business. And when businesses see those things, people come to our community for tourism, they come to our community to learn more, they move here and build families, and which adds to our tax base and become customers for them. So it's a win-win for businesses to be involved with wildlife.
Thanks. I appreciate that perspective so much. We have invited you here today for a special reason. Melissa's passion for service has been evident through her dedication to preserving open space and protecting wildlife while on city council. You also developed appreciation for nonprofit organizations. And because of this deep belief in service, you've assisted in forming a number of them, but for us specifically, you guided us through the process of becoming a nonprofit. And all of this was just because you're passionate about that and about our cause. Mm-hmm. You consistently showed up. Whenever we had an activity going on, you would bring food and snacks and cheerlead and offer support and encouragement that was vital to our success on those projects. We wanted you to know how much we value what you do. We know that you continue to advocate on our behalf in your position at the Chamber of Commerce and just the people you know in the community. You have such a strong ethic of service and compassion, and it shows, and we have benefited greatly from it. And so have the wildlife here. We're making great steps. I want you to know that we appreciate you. We and our local wildlife owe you a debt of gratitude far beyond what words can say. And the important thing that you need to know, you talk about why leaving things better than you found them, is that your work is contributing toward a lasting legacy that will go on far beyond when we are all here. And so the Eagle Mountain Nature and Wildlife Alliance is happy to present you with an award as a Lifetime Wildlife Advocate.
Thank you so much. This means so much to me. The thing is you guys are the real heroes. You've put so much time into building this organization and just making people aware and inviting people like council members to Kestrel Landings so that we can be changed by it. So thank you guys for all that you do. You've really left me better than you.
Thank you. We appreciate you so much. Why don't you show us?
Okay. Polka dots are my favorite.
Oh, good.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you guys so much.
You're very welcome.
This is so special.
We love and appreciate you, Melissa.
Aww.